Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angelica Salas, and I am the president of the Chirla Action Fund. Is Chirla in the house? Bienvenidos a todos a nuestro foro presidencial de Unidad y Libertad. Welcome to everybody to our presidential forum, Unity and Freedom.
Give it up. And I'm Dorian. I am president of Community Change and head of Community Change Action, the sponsor of Fair Immigration Reform Movement Action. And I too am excited to welcome you to today's forum.
There are more than 500 people here today. Give yourselves a big round of applause.
Just do what I told you to do.
500 of you from the Chirla Action Fund, from the Fair Immigration Reform Action, and also here you are representing many states, over 33 states, and there are many of you who are here representing over 44 groups. Give yourselves a round of applause because you represent our nation.
So listen, today we are gathered here in our power. In 2018, our movement, people of color and immigrants, reached more than 2.5 million voters of color in 21 states. We flipped the House of Representatives to Democratic control. We ended the hateful attacks and scapegoating from that racist xenophobe in the White House. And we didn't see a blue wave, folks. We saw a black and brown wave of voters of color taking control of their destiny.
And many of the House seats, the key House seats that were won, were right here in California. Of the 41 House seats that changed hands in 2018, 7 came from here, from California. And that happened because of the work of many of you, from the Chirla Action Fund, from many of you with our independent expenditures that said, we want our country back and we deserve to have a voice in this nation. All together, with our sister organization, Chirla, we were able to contact and turn out to vote more than 250,000 voters.
And with our local and national partners in Firm Action and our PAC, Community Change Voters, we ran voter programs in 21 states, zeroing in on 24 House races, 5 Senate races, 6 governor's races, dozens of state legislative races, and several progressive ballot measures.
That's right. And we did all this work while remaining true to our mission of focusing on those who we think have the highest and biggest potential and game changers. And that was our people. And those are voters of color, immigrant, new American voters. That's who we called on them, on our leaders. And we believe that it is those leaders that are returning every single time, and to make sure that this country, again, stands with them.
That's right. So let's set some ground rules for today. We're going to get to it. We'll be meeting with 4 candidates, Senator Harris, Secretary Castro, Senator Sanders, and Governor Inslee. Angelica and I will moderate the conversation, and we'll also hear testimonies and stories from affected families all across the country. These families represent our movement. So let's put all our phones on silent. We have about 35 minutes with each candidate on stage with questions from the moderators and leaders from our organizations.
We will also like to take this time to thank NBC Telemundo, who now is live streaming this event to almost 6 million viewers on Facebook.
6 million viewers around the country.
YouTube. So audience members, follow us. Let's say to Telemundo, NBC Telemundo, gracias.
All right, Angelica, let's do this.
Let's do this, Dorian. So now, I have the honor to introduce a friend of immigrants and of the Chirla Action Fund to the stage, Senator Kamala Harris. Kamala, Kamala Harris is a lifelong public safety and civil rights leader. Senator Kamala Harris was elected to the Senate in 2016, and she is the second African-American woman in history to be elected to the U.S. Senate, and the first African-American and the first woman to serve as Attorney General of the great state of California. Senator Harris has been a longtime ally of ours, and we welcome her presence on this stage as California's U.S. Senator. Welcome, Kamala Harris. So we're going to begin with our first story, Lupita Rojas.
Hi, Senator Harris. My name is Lupita Rojas. I am 18 years old, high school student from San Fernando Valley, and I will be the first in my family to attend college. I plan to attend California State University Northridge this fall on a full ride scholarship. I will vote for the first time in this 2020 election. My parents moved to the United States in the early 90s, and we lived a happy life until 2008, when there was a massive immigration rate at my dad's workplace. My dad was one of more than 130 people detained during this rate. I was only 7 years old when this happened. A day after my dad was detained, I was back at school waiting to receive an academic award that had been announced for some time. For some reason, I expected to see both of my parents sitting in the crowd waiting to see me walk on stage and receive my award. I had forgotten what happened the day before when they called my name to pick up my certificate. I realized that my future was going to change. My role changed. My grade dropped and my emotional balance suffered. I share this experience with you because many people, especially politicians, don't realize that students are deeply affected by detention and family separations. My mom thought I was fine while my dad was fighting his deportation. But deep inside, I was in pain. Everything that happened in society affects children as well as adults. I stand with Cheerlead Action Fund in fighting for just and humane immigration reform. I stand against family separation. I want to ensure that not $1 more is spent on the enforcement and deportation machine. Family is at the center of our society, and we must do all we can to keep family together. After years of fighting his case, my dad was able to adjust his status in 2012. He is no longer undocumented, but I know there are families that are not lucky and that the opportunities are limited. Our vision is to live united and free by changing our immigration system to ensure everyone here is able to thrive. To us, that means everyone should be able to live in a healthy and safe conditions and that everyone is protected equally under the law. We believe immigration policy must be grounded in a racial, economic, and gender justice. Tell us why you're here today with us. What are the values and principles that will inform your immigration policy as President of the United States? Tell us how racial justice and gender and economic justice fit into your vision.
I am just so pleased to meet you, and congratulations on your graduation and getting accepted to university, and for your courage, and for being a leader, and I thank you. So I will now answer the questions that you have asked. So I am a proud daughter of California. I am a proud daughter of immigrants. I am proud to be serving in the United States Senate because there I have an ability among all the leaders who are in this room to fight for what is right and what is just and what is fair. And these are a lot of the reasons why I'm also running for President of the United States. On this issue of immigration, first of all, you said it so well and so poignantly and beautifully and the way you presented your own story, and you presented it with such courage. And it is a story of courage. And it is a story of a child who, through her eyes, has witnessed what have been human rights abuses being committed by the United States government. And it also is a story that is an immigrant story of, in spite of all of the obstacles, persevering and pushing through to exercise self-determination in a way that you are going to show everyone what leadership looks like because of all that you do and all that you are. But there's no question, first of all, when this president was elected, the morning after, and it happened to be the same night I was elected, the morning after, I was so upset knowing that the candidacy of the current president of the United States was built on vilifying immigrants, on this vanity, multi-billion-dollar vanity project of his called a wall. And knowing that the night of that election and the morning after, there were so many children who were crying in abject fear, along with their parents, not knowing if there would be a knock on their door the next morning or the day after or the day after from a deportation force to take them away from their families. And I was actually so upset about it that the first press conference that I did after being elected, I did at Chairla's offices, because I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to make a statement that was a statement that we will fight. We will fight, and we will fight on behalf of you. We will fight on behalf of your parents, and we will fight on behalf of the soul of this country. Because when it comes down to it, we all know the goal. The goal has to be among many that we pass comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway towards citizenship, that we renew immediately the protections of DACA, that we also understand that the DACA recipients have parents who also deserve a path and protection. It is about understanding this administration came in, and among the populations that it vilified, it withdrew TPS protection, and I would reinstate those on day one, including extending them to Venezuelan refugees. And these are, but all of the reasons that I feel the way I do on this issue, and am therefore committed to what I know must happen, is because it is just simply about what is right. This is a nation that was founded by immigrants. I say everywhere, look, unless you are Native American or your ancestors were kidnapped and brought over on a slave ship, your people are immigrants. And so our country needs to look in the mirror on this issue. And then look in the family album. Right? Look at all the names in the family Bible. See how they were spelled and where they were born. And then have a real conversation about who built this country and who continues to be the future of and to fulfill the aspiration of the promise of this country. It is on all of those bases that I say that I am committed forever and always, and especially as the next president of the United States, to ensure that we have comprehensive immigration reform and a pathway towards citizenship. And for you.
Thank you.
You did such a good job. Go.
Thank you, Lupita, and thank you, Senator Harris. As you know, we've been working and fighting for over 20 years to pass just and humane immigration reform that will really dignify and represent the 11 million undocumented workers in this country that are contributing. We want to know today, we want to ask you if you are willing to work with Congress and to immediately, upon becoming president in the first 100 days, craft and transform our immigration system, our immigration law, so it is more just and it is more humane.
Absolutely.
And how will you do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Absolutely, yes. And how is, there are a number of things. One, you know, Angelica, I think that we all know, certainly in the recent history, and certainly before this president came into office, that there is bipartisan support. There is bipartisan support. And, you know, I'm now obviously campaigning around the country. I'm spending a lot of time in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Nevada, of course, our cousin. But, you know, I'm spending a lot of time also in places that don't historically have a lot of immigrants, and historically meaning the last 20 years. I mean, obviously before they did. And, but are acutely aware of the economic benefit to this country of having immigrants. I'm meeting farmers in Iowa, some who may have, you know, who may be registered Republicans, may have even, you know, voted for this president, who also know that the strength of their farms and their ability to continue to grow and thrive is in large part based on an immigrant workforce. So there is, and that, you know, and that's the case in California and in so many other places and states in our country. So there is, I think, an acknowledgement among both parties, but Republicans, that we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform. You can see that reflected in what is a bipartisan support for the DREAM Act, right, as it relates to our DACA recipients and our dreamers. So I'm going to attempt to work on a bipartisan solution. I think it's really also important to recognize that the President of the United States, when she has this microphone in front of her, has an incredible amount of power. Power to create a perspective. Power to elevate public discourse. Power to educate people about issues that they may or may not know about. And when we have a new president of the United States and she uses this microphone in a way that is about accurately discussing what is actually happening and also the benefits of passing comprehensive immigration reform, I believe the political will be there to get the job done.
So will you do it in the first 100 days?
Yes, and then the first 100 days. It will be one of my highest priorities, no question. No question. But, and if I may, I'm gonna tell you why that your part about the first 100 days is important to me. Every day that we do not resolve this issue is a day that Lupita, 7-year-old Lupita or 17-year-old Lupita, has to worry about whether her father's gonna come home at night. Every day that we don't deal with this issue is a day that some kid who is now turning 18 and graduating high school, who is undocumented, has to be concerned about whether or not he can really go apply for a job or go to college, being concerned about whether he's going to get deported or not. Every day that we delay handling this is a day that a mother might decide, I don't want to send my child to school and have an interaction with a teacher or to the hospital and have an interaction with a doctor because they may report us. Every day that we don't deal with this is a day that whole communities of people have been led to believe by this administration, because there have been policies that have supported this, the idea that if you wave the patrol officer who is driving down the corner after some horrible crime has happened to you, you might end up getting deported, so best not to tell anybody you were raped. Every day in America, until we resolve this issue, there are real consequences to real human beings. That's why these first 100 days are important to me.
And that's why Lupita is canvassing and getting out the vote too. Thank you.
So Senator Harris, I want to move from legislative action to administrative action, because we know that the damage done by the current president to immigrant communities is immeasurable. And let's not get into all of that, but I do know you can help us fix that as President of the United States. So I want to ask you about executive authority, because the Trump administration, as you know, has used executive authority to harm immigrant communities and to advance a very hateful anti-immigrant agenda. So zero tolerance policy, Muslim ban, DACA, TPS rescissions, enhanced interior enforcement, shifting of funds from federal agencies to build a so-called wall. What are you doing today? And how would you use executive orders as president to immediately undo the damage caused by the current administration and rebuild trust? And which executive orders would you issue in your first 100 days?
I'll take the end of the question first. Yep. Immediately, I'd reinstate DACA. Immediately, I would put back in place the protections and the TPS protections for the people of the variety of countries that have now been withdrawn. Immediately revoke the Muslim ban. And everything else that has been the backward, hate-driven, frankly, policies of this administration that are on that list. And then it is to work on comprehensive immigration reform, but also immediately telling the stories, and again with the platform that a president of the United States has. You know, I often, when people will talk to me in these town halls and these various things we do as a candidate, but I'll often talk about and hopefully help the audience understand what we are talking about when we talk about, for example, asylum seekers. And I can see that eyes open because they haven't thought of it through this perspective. And I say, look, because there's certain universal, I think, understanding about what prompts people and motivates people and the desperation of people. And I talk about the fact that, imagine you're a mother and you make a decision to pay a coyote to transport your child through an entire country that you don't know, the country of Mexico, where that child will face unknown peril. And you pay to do this. Why would that mother do that? And it is a very simple and profound answer, because she knows the peril and danger that child faces where they are is worse. So anyone who has mothered a child, and that can be anybody, I say that figuratively, an auntie, an uncle, a cousin, anybody who has parented a child, must understand then that it is immoral when you then look at that child when they arrive and you say as a policy, go back to where you came from. That is absolutely immoral and wrong. And that is essentially what is behind the policies of this administration. Let us talk about any parent knowing that when you arrive at the place that you have gone to because you are seeking safety, that when you arrive there, you are separated from your child. Even nursing mothers were separated from their babies. That is not about border security. That is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. And so that's the other intention of mine, both as a United States Senator, as a candidate for President of the United States, and as, you know, God willing, and with a lot of work, President of the United States, to talk about what's really behind these stories. Because the fact that this person who is called President of the United States currently, the fact that he dared to use a bully pulpit in a way that characterizes these populations as rapists and murderers is absolutely doing a disservice to the office of the President of the United States as well as everything else.
I now want to call to the stage Nana Gamfi, who will share her story.
Greetings, Senator Harris.
Greetings.
My name is Nana Jumphy. I'm the Executive Director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, the oldest and largest Black-led organization dedicated to advocating, educating, organizing on behalf of Black immigrants, but also uniting Black immigrants and African Americans under the umbrella of racial, social, economic justice.
That's right.
As you well know, the story of Black immigrants is too often about dreams deferred and sometimes derailed. My parents, other relatives, close friends migrated to the United States with that vision that we get of the US as a place of equal opportunity for all. We come here, we give up so much, we change our name from Aquia to Nancy, do everything we can to integrate into American society, not understanding that to integrate as a Black immigrant is to integrate into Black America and to be subjected to the trauma of anti-Blackness that is an integral part of this society. We are harmed by immigration policies that target us, that disproportionately harm us, such as attacks on diversity visas, family-based visas, protected status, and asylees, refugees. We suffer disproportionate incarceration by both the criminal sanctions and the immigration detention and deportation system. Keisha Michaels from Belize, Charles Kuyung, Brother Africa from Cameroon, Botham Jean from St. Lucia, Chinedu Okobi from Nigeria, Alfred Olanga from Uganda. These are just some of the unarmed Black immigrant family that have been killed by police in the streets of the United States because of racial profiling and anti-Blackness. We want the next president to recognize that the United States is not and has never been a white country. This country is built upon the sacrifice, for many, the ultimate sacrifice, and labor of people of color, and its laws should manifest the dignity and beauty of our communities. We want the next president to use executive orders, as you've described, to reverse the devastating immigration policies of the last 3 decades, not 4 years, 3 decades. We want the next president to support permanent protections for all immigrants without carved-out exceptions. We want the next president to abolish immigration detention and deportation and get our people out of all prisons, all jails, all cages. We want the next president to push and support legislation that squarely dismantles the systemic and structural anti-Blackness and racism that is part of American life. Now, Senator Harris, you shared in a recent interview that you were born realizing the flaws in the criminal justice system. Yeah. You know that the immigration system imposes disproportionately harsh consequences on non-citizens, and particularly Black immigrants and Black folks in general, from lengthy detention to deportation and family separation. Much of this is the result of past legislation, such as the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. The main beneficiaries of the current system are the people who own and run private prisons and detention centers. This system violates people's rights, freedom, and due process protections. So I'm going to ask you a specific question about that. How will you reverse the harmful provisions of the IIRIRA that strip due process, restrict judicial discretion, and further criminalize and deport our people?
Yeah, that's right. I thank you. I thank you. So immediately, first of all, it is about, to your point, speaking truth about the history and the motivation. When we have a current president of the United States that refers to African countries by a word I will not use here, when we have a president of the United States who has one of his first acts puts a ban in place, banning people from Muslim countries clearly because they are Muslim. When we have an administration that, through its Department of Justice, has attempted to revive the war on drugs. When we have an administration that, through its Department of Justice, has essentially shut down enforcing consent decrees, which means, by the way, that there is a court that is overseeing what should be reform of a police department that has been found by evidence to have been engaged in discriminatory policies. When we have an administration and a president who runs a Department of Justice that has essentially shut down pattern and practice investigations of police departments who are engaged in discriminatory and excessive force conduct, we know we need a new president of the United States. So the question then becomes, well, what will she do when she is elected? And I couldn't agree with you more that there has to be a look at the history and the current laws that are in place that have led to facilitating this perspective and therefore the policies of this administration. I would immediately, and I'm actually on a bill right now, the Dunn Act, to put a moratorium on the private detention facilities. And under my administration, we will not fund private detention facilities any longer. And on the point of these detention facilities, let me just tell you, I went to Otay Mesa here in California. And I will tell you, and I met with the mothers who were there, who did not know where their sons and their daughters were after being separated from them. And I'm going to tell you, they were talking about it's a detention facility. They were trying to make it sound like it was a day camp. It was a prison. It was a prison where you close one door before, and then you got to walk a while before you can get through the next door. There are barbed wires all over the place. They have time, they should wake up time, they should go to sleep. It cost something like 85 cents a minute to do a phone call, and they were paying these women $1 a day to clean the toilets. And when the DHS officials came before my committee, and I said, what are you doing? Oh no, they want to clean the toilets. Right? So when we talk about what's going on in them, I am acutely aware of how wrong it is. And so I can tell you, this is not just some theoretical issue for me. I feel very strongly about the need to do exactly as you are advising. On the issue of what is happening about our immigrants coming from African countries, from the Caribbean, from Haiti, there is no question. And we've seen a history of it. It's not just with this administration. We can look back and remember the vivid images of the Haitian refugee camps to remember what this is about. And you're absolutely right to talk about then the compounded experience of the person, because again, let's take it back to the fact that we're talking about real people. People who have fled a place that was harmful to them, to be detained essentially in a prison for doing what? Coming to a nation that sets itself out as being the place that will welcome those that flee harm. But they're imprisoned once. Eventually they get out, and then there's a system that has been, a criminal justice system that has been informed too often by racial bias, and they may get imprisoned or profiled again. So it is important that there is a president of the United States who actually understands the complexity of the issue and understands the profound nature of the ubiquity of the issue so that we can get reform in place. And I pledge to you to work with you to address these issues.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
For your work. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Nana. And thank you, Senator, for holding this dialogue and for your fierce and thoughtful and caring responses. So really appreciate that. Now, when you become President of the United States, Are you committed to work with the fair immigration reform movement in order to craft the legislation and the policies that will care for our families and lift them up?
Absolutely, and all of the work that I've done in my career leading up to today has been a function of those relationships and that partnership. Because I will always measure my work based on a number of factors, but first among them is it relevant? Does it actually have impact to the people that I believe will be helped? And the only way to ensure that is to work with the people on the ground who are doing the work every day to ensure that whatever it is I'm thinking and talking about is actually reflective of what is actually happening and what needs to actually be done.
Well, thank you very much for being here with us.
Are we done?
Well, your time.
Well, one more question. Will you,
Well-
will you commit to meeting with us, firm action, in the first 100 days of your administration
Yes,
to keep
absolutely.
working? All right.
Absolutely.
You heard that, right, everybody?
Your time. We would love to have you more time, but
Real
we've
thrilled.
been told.
We're thrilled
But you
you
have
joined
to-
us. Would you like just a minute or two for closing remarks?
Oh, yes, okay, yes. Yes, I'll just say this. This is a room full of incredible leaders, and I want to thank you, because the work that you've been doing, you know, to the last sister's point, over many, many years, it's not just these last 2 years, but in particular these last 2 years, has been some of the most difficult work that can be done. And as leaders, I know, first of all, that this is personal to you, that you work long hours. Many are not being paid, and those who are being paid are certainly not being paid enough. I know that it is personal to you in a way that the people that you help, they've got your cell phone number, they probably know where you live, and you work around the clock in supporting them. I know that this is the work of people looking in your eyes to see whether there's any indication that they should have any confidence that things are going to be okay. And you've got to convince them every day that you got to wake up and fight the fight every day of the week. And so I want to thank you for that, because we cannot give up on this. And the work that you do is so critically important. And history is going to show. History is going to show that the people pushing the policies that we've been discussing today are on the wrong side of history. And history is going to show that there was a movement that took place. And we face dark days, but history is also going to tell the story of the leaders who sacrificed so much and fought so hard and won. And that's the thing that I just want to leave everybody with. This is a fight worth having. And it's not easy, but it is a fight worth having. And I promise you, we will win this fight. Thank you.
Give it up for our Senator Kamala Harris. Now I have the honor of introducing another friend of immigrants, of firm action, of cheerleader action to the stage, Secretary Julián Castro.
And what do you know about Secretary Castro, Angelica?
Well, what we know is he was the mayor of San Antonio. He was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, a very important position. And he has been just a real fighter for our community.
I heard he has an immigration plan. There's a rumor that he said some things.
Yes, this immigration plan, part of the reason that he is here with us today is because he was the first candidate to actually put forward a bold and progressive immigration plan.
How many candidates have put forward a bold, forward-looking immigration plan? Does anybody know the answer? There are 48 candidates right now. I can't keep count. Okay, maybe 23.
Yeah,
I've only seen 3.
that's right.
That is unacceptable.
That's right.
That is unacceptable. If we don't go right at this president on his strategic racism and his use of scapegoating immigrants, any Democrat that wins the nomination will lose. So we need bold, forward-looking plans for immigration reform and a roadmap to citizenship. And we must demand it from all of the candidates who want to be the next president of the United States.
That's right, and that's why firm action is here. That's why Cheerla action is here. That is why community change action is here, because we have a vision for the future. And our vision is bold, it's beautiful, and it actually uplifts our families and our communities.
And with that, you want to do the introduction?
Sure. So welcome to the stage Secretary Castro, who is the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Obama and the former Mayor of San Antonio. Secretary Castro has the unique distinction of having, as I've described earlier, built one of the most progressive and far-reaching platforms on immigrant rights of any Democratic nominee. Secretary Castro has been a long and good friend of immigrants and our movement for immigrant rights. Is Texas in the house? So welcome, Secretary Julián Castro.
So Secretary Castro, our vision is to live united and free by changing our immigration system to ensure everyone here is able to thrive. To us, that means everyone should be able to live in healthy and safe conditions, and that everyone is protected equally under law. We believe immigration policies must be grounded in racial, economic, and gender justice. So, tell us why you're here with us today. What are the values and principles that will inform your immigration policy as President of the United States? And tell us how racial and gender and economic justice fit into your vision.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all very much for having me here. Buenas tardes. Good to be here with y'all. To all of the sponsors of this event, thank you for having us, the candidates who are here. So I'm here because I believe that in this country, everybody counts. That we need a president that believes that everybody counts. And, you know, this issue is very personal to me. I grew up with a grandmother who came from Mexico when she was 7 years old with her little sister because their parents had passed away. So in 1922, her closest relatives brought her to San Antonio, Texas. She grew up there, raised my mom as a single parent, and showed me the enormous contributions that immigrants make to our country. I'm here also because I have a completely different vision from this president on how we should deal with the issue of immigration. I believe that instead of cruelty, we should choose common sense and compassion for people. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some of these issues, but you know, I believe that that starts with decriminalizing border crossings, going back to the way we used to do this, doing away with Section 1325 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which, as y'all know, from 1929 until about 2004, was only enforced as a civil violation. And a lot of the problems that we have today are because, or they got worse, because we started to treat this as a criminal violation. I would change that. I would use executive orders to reinstate DACA, to work to reinstate DAPA as well, to extend TPS and DED protections to communities that are vital to this country, to take a whole host of other executive orders, including to stop the building of any wall and put the money back where it belongs.
So part of what we're doing today is connecting with immigrants themselves who want to tell their story. And to greet you today and to talk to you is Grace Pye, who's going to ask the second question, the first question.
Good afternoon. My name is Grace Pye. I'm an immigrant rights organizer in Chicago and a member of Illinois Immigrant Action. I wouldn't be here without our family immigration system. My mom immigrated at age 13 after her mother died of breast cancer, and she was sponsored on a family visa by my grandfather's sister. As a newly single parent, my grandfather moved his 5 children to the place where he had family, and that was Minnesota. He hoped for a better way of life and for better opportunities for his kids. On my dad's side, my grandmother sponsored her sisters to come here, and they helped raise me when I was growing up. Their support enabled my mom to be the breadwinner for our family while my dad pursued his education. I spent countless hours around my family growing up, aunts, uncles, my dad's cousins, grandparents, and they've all made me who I am today. President Trump's recent attack on family immigration sends the message that my family and the people that I love don't deserve to be here. They don't belong here. He is a racist. And right now, siblings of US citizens who want to reunite with their families have to wait more than 20 years if they're from Mexico or the Philippines. That's immoral. That's wrong. And we will not stand for it. When families are together, our communities thrive. Caretakers, who are mostly women, our mothers, our aunts, our grandmothers, they provide the support that our families need so that other folks can work outside of the household, contribute to our economy. In 2011, immigrants started 28% of all new businesses, despite accounting for just 13% of the population. My grandparents ran a small garment factory for 20 years, and they employed many of their immigrant neighbors. These economic contributions are valuable, but we must look beyond economic arguments. It's not enough. Our families carry our history and our memory. Our families shape who we are and who we will become. Compassionate family reunification policies, they don't need any justification. It is just the right thing to do. Families belong together. So my question to you is, Secretary Castro, will you commit to introducing immigration legislation in your first 100 days in office that strengthens the family-based immigration system and provides an accessible and equitable roadmap to full citizenship for all 11 million undocumented people? And what will your plan look like?
Thank you, and remind me your first name again?
Grace.
Grace. Thank you very much, Grace, for the question, and thank you for your activism on the fact that you have a personal experience that you can speak from makes it that much more powerful. I will commit to that. I think that this has to be a top priority for the next president. And, you know, what we found out in 2009, 2010, from the early days of the Obama administration, the lesson that we should have taken from that is don't wait. We can't wait this time to push immigration reform. And so I wouldn't wait as president. On April 2nd, I released my People First Immigration Plan, which includes, as I said, decriminalizing border crossings and treating it as a civil offense. It includes ending family detention, keeping families together. I agree with you. If we're pro-family, then we should be for family reunification and for keeping families together. And my plan would do both of those things. It also improves the legal immigration system because, as you all know, a lot of times when we start talking about the issue surrounding undocumented immigrants, somebody will say, well, what are you talking about that for? What about legal immigration? Right? And I tell people that those two things are not mutually exclusive. We're going to act with common sense and compassion when it comes to undocumented immigrants who are here or people who are coming to our southern border seeking asylum or who are undocumented. But we're also going to improve our legal immigration system, including by strengthening family reunification for people from around the world and adding visas, the number of visas, to harness the talent from around the world. I also have proposed getting to the root cause of the issues that we're having. You know, last month we had 92,000 people come to the southern border. I don't buy the BS narrative that this president puts out that these folks represent a national security threat. They don't. They're just looking for a better life, right? But what I do believe What I do believe is that if we want to get to the root cause, we need the equivalent of a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala that doesn't look down on these countries, but is willing to work as a peer with these countries in a mutually beneficial way to ensure that people can find safety and opportunity there in their home country instead of having to come here to the United States. And finally, I tell people that to a lot of folks, especially conservatives, this part is politically incorrect. Some people can't handle it, but it's the truth. And the truth is that we need, in this country, we need a lot of the folks who are coming here to the United States right now. We need them. We need them because they add vitality to our country, because they've always, for generations, been a part of making this nation a better, stronger nation. And we also need them because it would be economic suicide not to have them. We have a declining birth rate. We have baby boomers that are turning 65 at record numbers and drawing down on Social Security. Right? We're an aging population now. Last month, it was reported that we had the slowest birth rate in 32 years. Right? We see countries around the world like Japan that are already grappling with what happens when you don't replenish your workforce. We need a young, vibrant workforce if all of these senior citizens who are turning 65 and expecting to draw on Social Security for years and years are going to get it. That means that we need immigrants. And so I believe that it's both all of the things that you mentioned, family and our values, being pro-family. It's also, of course, economics and what's good for the well-being of this country into the future. And I would just encourage folks to go on juliancastro.com and to look up that plan because it's very comprehensive and very progressive.
Thank you.
I like what you did there. That was really smooth. So the website has a plan. Hey, other candidates, what you got? Okay, so just to be clear, first 100 days.
I could have said they can contribute too, on the website.
Oh, I just gave you a softball, and I'm gonna have to give you a stronger pitch. So first 100 days, just to be clear, you work with Congress for legislative action.
I will.
All right, so let's turn to executive authority. Because we know this administration has done so much damage and harm to immigrant communities using executive authority. And the list is very long. So zero tolerance policy, Muslim ban, DACA, TPS rescissions, enhanced interior enforcement, shifting of funds from other federal agencies to build a so-called wall. These are all incredibly damaging and harmful, and you've heard some of the stories already. What are you doing today? And how would you use executive orders as president to immediately undo the damage caused by the current administration and rebuild trust? And which executive orders would you issue in your first 100 days as President of the United States?
That's a great question. All of the ones that you mentioned, and that I mentioned a little bit earlier, both in the positive and just blocking what he has done, right? Making sure that we're not drawing money from other departments, whether it's the Department of Defense or anything, to build that wall. Which is a bad idea in the first place, and even more so that he's taking money that belongs somewhere else to do it. I would stop that. Also, TPS, DED, making sure that we reinstate where we need to reinstate and work to extend where we need to extend. On DACA and DAPA, that we reinstate those and fully support them. Of course, those are just temporary things because what we need is to push immigration reform that is progressive, that actually improves our system. And I'm committing to doing that at the beginning of my administration. I would also do a full audit of this private prison industry and eliminate it. I don't believe that anybody should have a profit motive for drawing in more undocumented immigrants. We need to stop that. And so I would do everything I could to stop it as president by executive order, and if need be, going to Congress and trying to stop it. In addition to that, I would move forward to Congress with the beginnings of that Marshall Plan that I spoke of to try and address the longer-term root causes of this challenge and to work with these Northern Triangle countries to address those issues.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next on stage to ask you a question is Jorge Alberto Lopez of Workers' Defense Project of your home state of Texas.
Hola, secretario Castro. Mi nombre es Jorge López, de Defensa Laboral. Llegué al estado de Texas en el año 2000 huyendo de Honduras porque temía que me mataran por ser homosexual, como le sucedió a muchos de mis amigos que eran trans. Ahora, casi 20 años en los Estados Unidos, sigo siendo hondureño porque esa es la tierra que me vio nacer. La tierra que me vio nacer, la tierra que carga mis lamentos porque no pude estar en el velorio de mi padre y tuve que ver a mi madre fallecer por FaceTime. Soy también americano de corazón y de mente, pero no de documentos. En el año 2009 fui arrestado y detenido por inmigración por 3 meses, ya que ese tiempo la ciudad de Austin colaboraba con inmigración y pude pelear mi deportación por el miedo a que me asesinaran si volvía a Honduras y pude tramitar mi permiso de trabajo. Parece mentiras, pero un permiso de trabajo abre muchas puertas. Llegué un día domingo a la 1 de la tarde a Estados Unidos y a las 3 de la tarde yo ya estaba trabajando en una traila de comida donde me pagaban $50 por semana. En Texas protegen a los empleadores y no a los empleados. Ahí fue donde me involucré con Defensa Laboral, quienes pelean por casos individuales de robo de salario y para empujar leyes pro inmigrantes en el estado. Tomen un tiempo y reflexionen en nuestras vidas. Somos los que movemos al país y la gente que este país necesita. Espero que los legisladores de este país escuchen y respeten nuestras historias como inmigrantes, como homosexuales, miembros de la comunidad LGBTQ, trabajadores y seres humanos. Todos entendemos la desigualdad económica de este país y la importancia de que haya una buena paga y acceso a beneficios para que tengamos estabilidad económica. Esta administración recientemente propuso ataques a familias de inmigrantes, previniendo el acceso de beneficios de salud, de vivienda pública, tomando represalia a residentes legales y a aquellos que se han convertido en ciudadanos americanos. ¿Qué hará su administración para dar marcha atrás a los esfuerzos anti-inmigrantes de la administración Trump y asegurarse de que los inmigrantes sean parte del plan para atacar la desigualdad económica?
So we're going to have a quick translation. I know you understand it, but we want to make sure everybody else does.
Hi, Secretary Castro. My name is Jorge Lopez from Workers' Defense Action. I came to the state of Texas in 2000, fleeing from Honduras because I was afraid I was going to be murdered because of my homosexuality, as it happened to many of my friends, some who were trans. I've been in the US for 20 years now, and I am still Honduran because that's the place where I grew up. A country where my pain lies in the distance because I couldn't be with my father when he passed, and I had to see my mother through FaceTime while she was agonizing in the hospital. Hola, Secretario Castro. Soy Jorge López de Defensa Laboral. I am also American by heart and mind, but without documents. In 2009, I was arrested and detained for 3 months by Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. At that time, the city of Austin collaborated with immigration. I was able to fight my deportation because of credible fear of being murdered. I was able to process a work permit. It may seem small, but a work permit opens many doors. I came on Sunday at 1 p.m. and was working at 3 p.m. cooking for a food truck where I was paid $50 a week. In Texas, laws protect employers more than employees. That is when I was involved with the movement to fight for individual cases of wage theft and push for pro-immigrant laws in the state of Texas. Take a moment and reflect on our lives. We are who move the country and the people this country needs. I hope that legislators in this country listen and respect our stories as immigrants, homosexuals, members of the LGBTQ, workers, and human beings. We are all too familiar with income inequality in this country and the importance of good wages and access to benefits to ensure economic stability. Yet, as you know, the reality for many undocumented families in this country is that they are unable to access needed benefits, are victims of wage theft and workplace retaliation, and lack access to retirement and health care. In fact, this administration recently proposed new attacks on immigrant families with proposals that would prevent immigrant families from accessing needed safety net benefits, including public housing, and hold it against those applying for legal permanent residency or citizenship. How will your administration work to reverse these efforts and ensure that immigrants are part of our country's plan to tackle income inequality?
Jorge, gracias por su pregunta, gracias por venir aquí y por su activismo en Texas, Austin, y también por su trabajo. La verdad es que nuestro país, este país necesita trabajadores como usted. Y voy a hablar en inglés con su permiso. I was saying, Jorge, thank you for being here. Thank you for your activism and for your work. And the truth is that the United States needs workers like him. You mentioned recently that this administration moved to try and crack down, it said, on undocumented immigrants who are living in public housing, which is a tremendous mistake. It would affect 55,000 children from mixed status families and cause so many families to go even deeper into poverty. It is immoral. What I would do is to oppose those kinds of actions. And in fact, I have said, most recently, I released what I call a People First education plan, that we should offer tuition-free public universities, community colleges, and job training programs to undocumented immigrants. And not only when it comes to education, but also in so many other ways. And people ask sometimes, well, why? People say, what do you mean that you want them to get these benefits? And you know what I tell them? I tell them, number one, they're human beings that deserve respect. And then secondly, they pay taxes. They pay taxes. I mean, Jorge, you're working hard. There's so many people who are working hard who are paying taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, all sorts of other payroll taxes. Our undocumented immigrants have been paying taxes for so long, and the fact is that they have not been benefiting from those benefit programs, by and large. And so I would ensure that we take care of families out there who need it, and also that we recognize the intersectionality of people's lives. You mentioned, for instance, people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual, transgender. And we need to ensure that just like we want to extend protections for an American citizen who happens to be from the LGBTQ community, that we extend those same protections to people who are immigrants in this country. I'm committed to doing that because I believe that that's what's best for our country. And if I'm elected president, again, I want to ensure that everybody counts. And that's part of my People First immigration plan, to make sure that we extend those protections and also ensure that these tax-paying, undocumented immigrants don't have to fear that we're going to go after their families. And we can ensure that their children can get a good education and that they can have health care when they need it. Because we need common sense and compassion, again, instead of cruelty.
Gracias, Alberto, and thank you, Secretary Castro. Next on stage, we will have Ignacio Acevedo of the New York Immigration Coalition.
Thank you, Secretary Castro, for being here today. My name is Ignacio Acevedo, and I'm a leader with the New York Immigration State Action Fund. I got here 10 years old, running from hunger. I was going to die. I was undocumented for 19 years, and I went through a very difficult process and became a citizen in 2013. You know, I believed in the American dream. I bought my house, I went to college, I opened my own business. But that was never enough. I was never enough to them. Now, I want to tell you about one of the worst moments in my life. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm dropping my cousin at his house. Now, it's like a normal day to me. So a cop drives by, sees there's two Latinos there, turns right back around. Then they get out of their car. They approach my window and my cousin's window. My cousin is scared right now. Now, I roll down the window with the courage that I'm a citizen. I said, "Officer, what did I do wrong?" He says, he talks to his fellow officer. "This mother blank has an issue. Get out of the car." I get out of the car. I still manage the courage to say one more time, "Police officer, what did I do wrong?" He says, "Shut up, or there's going to be a bigger problem." Then I hear the click of his gun. At that moment, I said, I was a little angry, but then that's it. I'm going to die right now if I don't shut up. What are they going to tell my mother? At that moment, my citizenship didn't matter. It did not matter that I did the right process. Now, the American dream to me became a nightmare. But as a result of this, I became an organizer in New York for the organization Nobody Leaves Me Hudson. In the last 3 years, I have mobilized around 5,000 people of my people to participate in our communities. My question now, without that said, FIRM has partnered with our sister organization, the National Partnership for New Americans, to ensure our diverse communities pursue the American dream and together transform our country into one that is welcome and inclusive of all, including immigrants and refugees. Would you commit to the New American Dream campaign by tearing down the invisible second wall or obstacles to fulfill our citizenship? Right here in California, the state spends around $200 million in immigrant legal services and integration. Now, the federal government spends only $10 million. My question is, would you invest real dollars to make sure aspiring Americans have the tools they need to succeed and include education, English classes, legal services, workforce development programs, vital investment that helps individuals in our nation thrive?
Ignacio, thank you very much for the question. Thank you for being here and for sharing your story. And yes, I absolutely would. One of the biggest lies that this president and others like him tell is that people who are here, immigrants, documented or undocumented, that they don't love America. Y'all have seen so many immigrants, and you're an example of this, Ignacio, who love this country, who want to fully be part of it. A lot of times that's what they want the most. That's why they're here. And we need to help make sure that they can fulfill that dream of becoming a citizen by ensuring that they can thrive as a family, be together, by ensuring that they're healthy, that they can get health care when they need it, that their children can get a good education, and also that they have the opportunity, if they want to learn English and to get job training, to be productive members of our communities. And so I absolutely support that. But what you mentioned is also a run-in with law enforcement. I have proposed getting rid of 287G. And doing away with ICE detainers as well. Because I'm a former mayor of San Antonio, Texas, and I know that as mayor, the best thing that we can do for local law enforcement is to let them do their job of enforcing local law. And let the federal government do its job. And so I want to ensure that our immigrant communities feel safer in the neighborhoods that they're in, that they feel comfortable reporting crime when it happens. They feel as if they're fully a part of a community, and we can only do that if we do away with 287G and with these ICE detainers. We also need to address, I think an issue that you didn't bring up directly, but I believe all of us understand, is that too oftentimes that the police treat black and brown men differently. And how many of these videos do we have to see before we understand that it's not just a case of a few bad apples? The whole system is broken. The system is broken. The system is broken, and it needs to be fixed. And again, so I see all of these dots as connected. We need to make sure that our immigrant communities can thrive, that they have those resources to thrive, and also to ensure that they're not targeted just because of who they are or what they look like or what neighborhood they live in. They're able to take care of their family and to contribute to the forward progress of this country. And under my plan, my vision for the future of this country, they absolutely would be able to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alberto. I'm going to take, before we go to our final question, I'm going to take a little bit of moderator privilege and just recognize that in the room is also our Congressional Representative Joaquin Castro, also chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. You guys thought you could fool us, right?
This is a rare joint appearance. There really are two of us.
Finally, Secretary Castro. We know it's not enough for us to fix the pathway or the roadmap to citizenship and repair the flaw in the criminal justice system and work to end structural racism faced by America's immigrants. We must stop criminalizing immigrant communities. The immigration system imposes disproportionately harsh consequences on non-citizens, from lengthy detention to deportation to family separation. Much of this is the result of past legislation, such as the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act, known as IRA. The main beneficiaries of the current system are the people who own and run private prisons and detention centers. How will you reverse the harmful provisions of IRA that criminalize immigrants, strip due process, restrict judicial discretion, and destroy our families?
Thank you very much for the question. Let me just say, I'm glad that you mentioned my brother, who's the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus this term, doing important work on this issue and many others. And also, habitually likes to say that the difference between us is that I'm 1 minute uglier than he is, which is not true. You're right. That IRA brought us things like 287G and the kind of crackdown that we have on our immigrant communities today. I would do away with 287G and with ICE detainers. When it comes to the private prison industry, with regard to immigration, of these contracts and what different companies are doing, how they're making their money and whether they're abiding by contracts and how they were given out, I bet that we're going to find some things that will make them very nervous about continuing to participate as a federal government contractor. And I fully intend to bring a light of transparency and accountability to those contracts. So that's number one. But secondly, we can't just say what we're going to do in the negative. What are we going to do in the positive? And what I want to do is that I want to make sure that we have a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants in this country. And so I would immediately start working on that, to put them on that pathway, and do away with family detention, work with organizations like this one and Raices and Catholic Charities and others all across the United States to invest in their ability as well, because really our nonprofit sector and our faith communities have been wonderful. They have stepped up to the challenge. I know it takes the federal government too, in a big way, but we want to support the work of so many organizations that are lending a helping hand and a heart, compassion to the work of making sure that our immigrants are welcome in the United States. And so I would get to work on all of those things as president.
Thank you.
So thank you, Secretary Castro, we really appreciate you being here. It's been an amazing time. Boy, does time fly. It's been an amazing time having this dialogue with you on stage. And for sure, you've shown yourself to be a true ally of the immigrant rights movement, and for that, we thank you. We also want to ask for your continued engagement with us. And so the question is, will you commit to meet with us and get to work on immigration reform after you're elected president?
I will. I absolutely will. Like I said, this is an issue that is very personal to me, and it's the reason that I made it my first policy rollout, and that I will continue to talk about it, and that we have to be fearless on this issue. This president thinks he's going to win in 2020 on the backs of our immigrants, and I'm determined to make sure that he loses.
So we're thrilled you're going to meet with us in 2021. And with that, we'd like to offer you a few minutes for closing remarks.
Yeah, first of all, thank y'all again very much. Angelica and Dorian for having me here, and all of the sponsoring organizations and the folks who are here who I know that you have been working on this issue, many of y'all, for so long. And you are the ones with the stories, yourselves as immigrants, and who have stepped up to help immigrant families who are in a state of crisis. I believe that we can do so much better in this country when it comes to getting immigration right. I believe, like every candidate is going to tell you, that we've been a nation of immigrants from the very beginning. But what I also believe is that in the face of a president who has become a demagogue, especially on the immigration issue, we can't afford to shy away from it. We have to be fearless. We have to take him on. And it's not enough to just complain about a couple of things that his administration is doing. We have to give the American people our own plan for how we're going to fix it. That's what I've done. I put out a bold immigration plan on April 2nd, almost 2 months before anybody else did. And I did that because I know that we can fix this broken system, that we can treat people with compassion and common sense instead of cruelty, that we can get the long-term root causes and be smarter about it in the 21st century. And that if we don't, we're going to become a weaker and weaker nation. Perhaps the biggest travesty is that if we do what the president wants us to do, we're actually not going to get stronger. We're going to decline. We're going to get weaker and weaker. So we've tried it his way. We've tried the cruelty. We've tried the scapegoating. We've tried the irrationality. Now we need to try something better. And my vision for immigration is that something better, to fix it and to treat people right and to get ahead in the years to come. And I hope that I can get your support in this campaign. I'm going to keep working hard, put my head down like our families do, and do the hard work and scrap. And I believe that by the time we get to the California primary on March 3rd, 2020, that I can win. Thank you very much.
Give it up for the man with the plan, Secretary Castro.
Thank you so much. Now, I again have the honor of introducing our next candidate. Introducing Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders has served as a member of Congress from Vermont for more than 30 years. He is a leading candidate in today's race. Yes. I'll say more about him. Bernie Sanders is serving his third term as the U.S. Senate after winning re-election in 2018. His previous 16 years in the House of Representatives have made him the longest-serving independent member of Congress in American history. Senator Sanders has fought against income inequality and for social justice for his entire career. Welcome, Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me congratulate the Firm Coalition for putting this important event on. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that these are unprecedented and difficult times. We have a president who is a racist, who is a pathological liar, who thinks that he can win re-election by dividing the American people up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion or our sexual orientation. Well, we got news for Donald Trump. That is a failing agenda. We are going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together around an agenda that works for everybody and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And our agenda is going to be based on the needs of ordinary people. It's going to be based on justice, economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Now, the bad news is that Trump is president. That's pretty bad news. But the good news is, and I don't want any of you in these dark and difficult days to forget it, that the vast majority of the people in this country do not agree with Trump on virtually all of his positions, including immigration reform. All right, don't forget that. All right, the American people are sick and tired of Trump demonizing immigrants, and they are sick and tired of his divisiveness. What the American people want is comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship for the 11 million undocumented people in this country. The American people, by overwhelming numbers, want immediate legal status for the 1.8 million young people who are eligible for the DACA program. And the American people want a humane policy at the border, because America is not about being a country which snatches babies from the arms of their mothers, which separates children from their parents, which put children in cages. That is not the America that we are. And as president, I will damn well make sure that is not the president, that is not the country we will be. All right? And the last point is that as a nation, we not only have to deal with immigration reform, which is a major priority, we have to deal with a broken criminal justice system. We have to deal with the global crisis of climate change. We have to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all, including the undocumented. We need major educational reform, including making public colleges and universities tuition-free, including for those who are undocumented. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. We need to build massive amounts of affordable housing and put millions of people back to work rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. So what we are trying to do in this campaign and will do in the White House is have a government that represents the needs of the working people of this country, not just the 1%. We will have a government based on justice, not on hatred, not on divisiveness, not on racism or sexism or homophobia. So what I'm very proud of is that in this campaign, we have over 1 million people who are already volunteering, because at the end of the day, that is how you win elections, through strong grassroots organization. So I want to thank all of you for what you're doing on this enormously important issue, and I look forward to working with you in the future and when together we are in the White House. Thank you very much.
Senator?
Got it.
Senator Sanders, thank you for your energy and thank you for being with us here tonight, or today. I want to introduce to you now Diana Bautista. She's a long-time... with Chirla Action Fund. Adelante, Diana.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name is Diana Bautista. I am 16 years old, a junior at a local Los Angeles high school and a first-generation student. I am part of Chirla Action Fund and Wise Up, a local immigrant youth group. I'm undocumented. I was not able to benefit from DACA. Trump resigned it a month before I turned 15. I felt devastated. I knew that my future was at a standstill. My family and I moved to the United States when I was only 3 years old, and we settled in the Los Angeles area. My mom is a domestic worker, and my dad works at a warehouse. My parents have faced many hardships, including sexual harassment, low pay and wage theft, and intimidation because of their immigration status. Above all that, they remained resilient and brave. I became involved with Wise Up and Chirla because of them, for them. My first encounter with activism was a demonstration outside of Representative Kevin McCarthy's office. That experience shaped my activism, especially because of something my mother told me. As I stood there with other immigrant youth and families, I recall that we started chanting, "Undocumented and unafraid." But deep down, I was very afraid. I called my mom right away to tell her I was scared, hoping that she would tell me to come home. But to my surprise, she told me, "I need you to fight for me because I cannot do it myself. I need you to stand up for me and be brave for me because I cannot do it by myself." Soon after, I was elected president of my school's Dreamers Club, and I never turned back. I hope to become an immigration attorney and fight in the courts for my community. I maintain a 4.0 GPA and will attend college soon. I will not let my status limit my chances. I work just as hard, if not twice as hard, as everyone else, and it's unfortunate that being undocumented puts me at a disadvantage. Not only an academic disadvantage, but an emotional disadvantage. These situations take a toll on our mental health. There are nights where I can't sleep thinking about the families being separated and all the children being put in cages. I fear that that will be my family one day. But I will rise above these barriers, facing me because I want to honor the sacrifices my parents have done and make the most of the opportunities they have given me. My community has been under siege since even before Trump took office. Last year, we were able to elect the most progressive and diverse House of Representatives ever. That's the change I know is possible in 2020. Immigrants all over the country also hope for a positive change in the White House and in Congress, and we will not stop fighting until we are able to obtain a clean immigration reform. Our movement has fought for almost 20 years, more than 20 years, to provide a pathway for citizenship for hardworking undocumented immigrants living in our country. Today we ask you if you will work with Congress and commit to immediately introduce immigration reform legislation within the first 100 days of your administration that provides a just and humane transformation to our very outdated immigration laws and prioritizes an accessible and equitable roadmap to full citizenship for undocumented people. And we want to know what your plan would look like.
You know, I am not often speechless. I give a lot of speeches, but you've kind of taken my words away. The answer to your question is obviously yes. We will introduce major, comprehensive immigration reform with a path towards citizenship within the first 100 days. We will expand the DACA program immediately to provide legal protection to you so you don't have to be afraid of going out on the street and being arrested. We will protect your parents as well by expanding the DACA program to include them as well. Your parents are hardworking, hardworking people who are doing important work for our economy, and they should not be afraid. It is a horrible thing that so many, not only young people, but your parents as well, have to wake up in the morning in fear. And you're right, I can only imagine the toll that it takes on you to live in fear. I'll tell you a story. Just yesterday, literally, I was in Las Vegas. And this is a story that I heard yesterday from a young man, and I suspect it's a story that many of you are familiar with. He said that some years ago, he's 17, and he said that some years ago he was in a car, I think his father may have been driving, they were speeding, they were stopped by a police officer, and they were scared to death. And the police officer said to them, "Are you undocumented?" And they lied. And they said, "No, we are documented." And the police officer was apparently having a good day, and he said, "Okay, have a nice day, goodbye." But if that police officer was having a bad day and said, "Good, I want to check that out," that family could have been deported and separated. It is unimaginable that you and millions of other people in this country you have lived virtually your entire life here, right? Your parents have worked here for decades. That people still have to walk out on the street and be fearful of being deported or having their family separated. So this is a promise, and put it down there, because this is a promise that will be kept. We are going to end that kind of ugliness and divisiveness. There will be a path towards citizenship there will be legal protection for the undocumented people in this country. That's a promise.
Thank you. I'm now going to call up our another leader from Casa in Action. It is my honor to introduce to you Arlette Morales.
Hello. My name is Arlette Morales, and I am here today representing Casa en Acción from Pennsylvania. I'm a 16-year-old high school junior. I was born in Puebla, Mexico, and arrived in the United States when I was 2 years old. The most difficult part of having to leave Mexico was having to leave my grandparents and my family behind. I admire my parents for all the sacrifices that they have done for me, and everything I do is to make them proud. I grew up in a small town of York, Pennsylvania. It's a lot like all the other small towns across the country. York has been built with the spirit and the contributions of new residents and with the core value of neighbors helping neighbors, no matter how different they are. York is also a bellwether for the political temperature of the country, and I am thrilled at the opportunity to shift these political winds by organizing my community to register to vote. As I always tell voters, I can't vote yet, but you can, so please use your voice. DACA was shut down just 17 days before my 15th birthday, meaning I was not eligible to apply. In fighting for DACA, I have truly found my voice and the strength to keep going. As a youth activist in New York, I started to become more aware of the things that were happening and how they interconnect between the struggles of the global, national, and local politics structure that results in similar structures that my friends and neighbors have to face. Like a lot of people my age, I'm passionate about climate justice and the need for bold solutions to our global climate crisis. I recognize the direct connection between climate change and migration and the unequal impact of climate change on poor, Black, and brown communities in my own neighborhood and around our country. This especially hit home last year in New York when we received a large wave of climate refugees from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. I heard firsthand of the destruction caused on the island by both climate change and inadequate resources for climate adaptation in poorer communities across the island. It made me so angry. I jumped into action with Casa en Acción and helped register more than 1,000 new Latino voters and urged voters to support candidates who support policies to promote climate justice, a just recovery for Puerto Rico, and a welcoming communities for immigrants and refugees, including climate refugees. You've recognized that climate change and global warming are significant threats to our world. As weather conditions become more extreme, families will continue to move across borders, some fleeing devastating natural disasters. The current administration has responded to these drastically changing conditions by refusing to engage in global climate change efforts, increasing inhumane border policies, and attacking the process. Current US policy doesn't include an avenue for victims of climate disasters, with the exception of TPS, which is a reactive rather than a proactive program. How can you address this as a president? How can the fight for climate change include an immigration reforms? Thank you.
You know, it's kind of fun to be here because I hear more common sense from your questioners that I hear on the floor of the Senate for months, so it's... Okay, you raised a couple of issues, and let me deal with one. The reason that we have a government in Washington that ignores the needs of working people, that ignores the crisis of climate change, is that you have a government by and large that is owned and controlled by wealthy campaign contributors, all right? So one issue that you didn't talk about that we also have to put on the table is campaign finance reform. Because if you don't stop the ability of billionaires to buy elections, then we're never going to see justice in this country. And the second thing that we have to do, and you raised this point, is that we are making progress, and I've been working really hard on this, to get young people involved in the political process. The truth is that your generation, and I am so proud to say this, your generation is the most progressive generation in the history of this country. All right? Your generation understands what the President of the United States does not, that climate change is real. Your generation is anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic, anti-religious bigotry. That's your generation. But, wait a minute, that's the good news. I'll tell you the bad news is that the idealism and the decency of the younger generation doesn't mean anything unless young people get involved in the political process. So I applaud you, and here is the truth, and I applaud you very much for registering so many people. That's what energy and dedication can do. But here's the truth. For many, many years, younger people voted in a much lower percentage than older people. Older people in this country voted a pretty high percentage. Historically, young people have not. In 2018, we saw some good changes. We saw young people waking up and understand that it's not good enough to complain, they got to get involved and they have to vote. And we had the highest voter turnout from young people in the last 70 years in 2018. That's the good news, but we have to do better, okay? So if you are concerned about all of these issues and others, you must get involved in the political process. You registered 1,000 people? Unbelievable. That's what we have to do. And when young people go to the polls and vote for climate justice and economic and social justice, we will transform this country. On climate change, let me be as clear as I can be. What the scientists, the people who most study this issue, tell us is that we have 12 years, which is not a long period of time, to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And they tell us, if we do not do that, a bold transformation of our energy system, if we do not do that, there will be irreparable harm to this planet. And that means that your kids and your grandchildren may well grow up in a country and in a world which is increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable. So what we are looking at is a situation where there is no choice. We have got to have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry and to transform our country away from coal and oil and gas into sustainable energies. And that is what I intend to do. The other point that I would make, I don't mean to go on so long, but this is such an important issue. All of you know climate change is not just an American issue. America cannot do it alone. So what my hope is that instead of seeing countries all over the world spend well over $1 trillion a year on weapons of destruction, weapons that kill each other, I would help lead the countries of the world, bring them together to fight our common enemy, which is climate change. So that's what I would intend to do. And obviously you are right in saying there are going to be, and there are right now, refugees when there is extreme weather, when there is flooding, when there is drought, people migrate. And it is an important issue, and the United States must be welcoming to those people as part of an overall immigration policy. So thank you very much.
Senator Sanders, I want to turn briefly to executive authority. So we know the damage this president has done to immigrant communities, rescinding DACA, TPS, the Muslim ban, moving federal money to build a so-called wall. The question is, what are you doing now? But more importantly, what would you do in your first 100 days using executive authority to undo the damage of President Trump?
Everything we possibly can. Look, and obviously it is immigration reform, it is criminal justice reform. You know, this president has been the most destructive president maybe in the history of our country. So we have to do what we can do legally, because I do believe, unlike this president, in the Constitution of the United States. But we will use all of the executive orders that we can, and we will also demand that Congress start moving in addressing the very, very important issues facing this country. And I mentioned many of them. It's climate change, it's immigration reform, it is criminal justice reform, it is health care for everybody. It is making sure that these young kids, that you can go to a public college and university tuition-free and not worry about student debt. We need you to be educated in the best way you can. So there's a lot of work to be doing, and we will certainly use all of the authority that we have.
Thank you, Senator. I'll move to the final question. We know that the fight for racial and gender justice and the fight for immigrant rights are closely tied together, and we know that we must work together to end racism in this country. We're committed to fighting for an inclusive, free, and just society. We cannot achieve this unless we confront the racism and the xenophobia dividing our country today. As you stated earlier, the Trump era has brought this truth front and center. If you agree that immigration is a civil rights issue, and the fight for immigrant justice must include structural racism and confronting the brutality of our current broken immigration system, tell us how you would address these challenges and how you would include all immigrant communities, Black, Asian, Latino, refugees, and asylees.
Well, that is a question that requires, I'm going to have to give you an abbreviated answer. For a start, we have a criminal justice system which is broken and which is racist. All right, so right now in America, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. Think about it. China is 4 times our size. We have more people in jail than China has. Disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American, right? So what I will be doing as president is, instead of investing $80 billion a year, $80 billion a year, it's a lot of money, local, state, and federal level, in jails and incarceration, we will be investing a significant part of that in jobs and education for young people in order to make sure they don't end up in jail. It costs less money to send a young person to the University of California than it does to lock them up. So let us make sure that we move in that direction. Second of all, when we talk about racism and criminal justice, to a significant degree, the so-called war on drugs has a lot to do with racism. For example, the African American community and the white community smoke marijuana, do marijuana at about equal levels. But if you are Black, you are 6 times more likely to be arrested than if you are white. And that is why I believe that we should move to end the war on drugs and legalize marijuana. And the other point that I would make, and I want to end this on an optimistic note because this is what I believe is true. Never, ever believe that Donald Trump is speaking for a majority of the people in this country when he gives vent to his racist and ugly comments. He is not speaking for a majority of the people of this country. And we need leadership in America, and I would be honored to provide that leadership that brings our people together on all of the issues that we are talking about, that talks about love and compassion, not hatred and divisiveness, that talks about the potential of human growth, not trying to put people down and humiliate them, not terrorizing people, not making people live in fear when they get up in the morning and they go to school. So I want to end this on an optimistic note. I am not smoking anything today. When I tell you, not just that we can have immigration reform, but that all of our young people who have the ability, and believe me, I've heard some of them this afternoon, who have the ability and the desire, you can be able and should be able to get a higher education regardless of your income. That's not a radical idea. That exists already in many countries around the world. Scandinavia and Germany. We can provide health care to all people as a human right. I live in Burlington, Vermont. 50 miles away is Canada. And if Canada, you have heart transplant or you have cancer therapy, you leave the hospital with no bill at all. All right? So these are not radical ideas. These are ideas that are already taking place in many countries around the world. But what our job is to make sure that we do not allow a handful of billionaires to continue to control the political life of this country. Now, the 1% is very, very powerful. They have a whole lot of money. They control the media. They control the economy. But at the end of the day, 1% is 1%, and 99% is a heck of a larger number than 1%. So let us all come together, black and white and Latino, Asian American, Native American, Muslim, Jew, Christian. Let's all come together to create the kind of nation we know we can become. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, we have one last question for you before you walk off stage. We want to know, when you become president, will you come and work with us? Will you work with us, the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, Community Change, Chirla Action Fund, in order to move forward a proactive and positive, humane immigration policy?
Look, the message of our campaign is us, not me.
Beautiful.
I can't do it alone.
Beautiful.
All right, you guys know, look, we are going to tap the best and the brightest in this country. And in this room and in your organizations, there is a lot of knowledge about immigration reform and other issues. And you're damn well right that we're going to work with you. Thank you.
Well,
Give it up for Senator Bernie Sanders, everybody. Are y'all ready for the next and last candidate for President of the United States of America?
So let me tell you a little bit about Governor Inslee. So Governor Jay Inslee is now serving his second term as governor of the great state of Washington. All the folks from Washington, make some noise. Governor Inslee has served in many levels of government, including both as a state legislator for many years in Washington State, and he also served for 2 terms in Congress, in the House of Representatives. He first represented Washington's 4th District and later Washington's 1st District. Governor Inslee is the author of Apollo's Fire, about the environmental and energy policy, and he has staked his campaign as president on raising the issue of climate change as a critical issue for our generation to tackle and solve. It is my pleasure to welcome Governor Inslee.
Not yet. Hold your applause. Hold your applause. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, one more time.
One more time, Governor Inslee. Welcome. Yes. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here for us. Now I think our next, we have our first question for you. Our vision is to live in a united and free by changing our immigration system to ensure everyone is able to live and thrive. To us, that means everyone should be able to live in a healthy and safe conditions, and that everyone is protected equally under the law. We believe immigration policies must be grounded in racial, economic, and gender justice. Tell us why you're here with us today, and what are the values and principles that will inform your immigration policy as President of the United States? Tell us how racial justice and gender and economic justice fit into your vision. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm here because I totally agree with everything you said, so that makes this a nice meeting. Before I say anything, can I welcome a couple Washingtonians? Rich and Rudy from One America in Washington State. They have been such great leaders. Thank you, Rich and Rudy. We know that every generation of Americans have what I believe is a sacred duty, and that is to fight and maintain the basic heart of America. And I believe the basic genius of America and basic value statement of America is with the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, and that it is our central duty to make sure that spirit is never extinguished in any corner of the United States. I fundamentally believe that. And I believe that because I think America is a unique country. It is one that is more an idea than a place. It is one that is more a collection of dreams than of memories. And it is one that is more a collection of people who make their homes intentionally rather than an accident of birth. And for that reason, I believe that every American has a responsibility to keep that light burning that has been central to the American experience. That is why when I heard about Donald Trump's Muslim ban, I was the first governor to stand up and say that was wrong to try to ban people who are Muslims. And I'm proud to be the first person to do that. That is why when, back even before Donald Trump was in office, when people said we shouldn't take refugees from Syria, I said they are welcome to Washington State because we believe in diversity in Washington State. That is why when I heard about 2 Cambodians that have been in my state for decades that had sort of ancient, mild convictions, I pardoned them so that they could stay here to keep working in Washington State. So this is what I believe the central core heart of America is. So now I have proposed a plan, which is quite comprehensive, which does 5 things. Number 1, it stops in its tracks the heinous activities of Donald Trump to bring division and hatred at our southern border. And it does so in a variety of ways. First, it rescinds the effort to peel back the protections of our dreamers. Second, it stops this trying to interfere with local law enforcement. Third, it stops the child-parental separation. Fourth, it gives people rights finally to get a hearing. People are entitled to an asylum hearing, and they ought to get it in a reasonable time period in the United States of America, in my view. The second pillar of my proposal is we've got to have comprehensive immigration reform. Now, here's what really gets my goat. Because of the idiocy of Donald Trump's wall, people have forgotten about the 11 million people in America who are working, paying taxes, coaching soccer, going to school, going to church, 60% of them who've been here over a decade, who are integral to our neighborhoods and communities. And it is high time to get comprehensive immigration reform, to give them a path to citizenship. And we got to get back on the track to doing that. Third, we have to again reestablish something that we ought to be proud of in America. Look, I'm proud to be an American and Washingtonian. And that has been tarnished by this small-minded pessimism and anger of Donald Trump to cut down our ability to be a place for refuge of refugees across this nation. This country, world, there are millions of refugees who are refugees through no fault of their own. And it is time to reestablish an American value system of being a place of refuge. And that's why I'm proposing we go back up to about 110,000, where this number belongs, of bringing refugees back in to the United States. Fourth, we know that we have a new challenge, and that is the challenge of the climate crisis. We know that it is dispossessing people all over the world. We know that the drought in the Horn of Africa has caused mass migration that has destabilized governments in Europe. We know we already have climate migrants today, subsistence farmers who literally are starving to death because of the climate crisis. And it is my belief that we have to have a plan not only to stop climate change, but to assist people in a rational way who are climate migrants by getting back in the international arena to lead the world to a common sense measure to help these people around the world. And I feel very profoundly about that. The fifth pillar of my thinking about this is we got to rebuild the United States economy. We're working people who are producing more every year and having all of their hard work and more productivity go to the top couple of percent. We got to rebuild the economy that works for everyone. And that includes new Americans. That is why I am proud to be the governor with the highest minimum wage in the United States. I'm proud to be the governor. And I was happy to march with the folks, a lot of folks in your community who were in Chicago. We marched to the headquarters of the McDonald's Corporation. And I asked a pretty good question. Why is the CEO of McDonald's Corporation making 2,100 times more than the median average paid worker in McDonald's? It's time to get average wages up so that people can be good consumers and take care of their families. And don't tell me that if you raise wages, you get a lousy economy. Look at my state. We got the highest minimum wage. We got the best paid family leave. We have the first public option for health care in America. We have the first long-term care plan so we can take care of our elders in America. And you know what else? We have the best economy in the United States. You want to see what works, come to Washington State. So that's what I believe, in short.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Give him a round of applause. So, just to say, you heard the 5 core principles of his plan, but I read it last night. 17 pages, y'all. It is 17 pages. Do you want to give a shout out to your website where it might be posted? We had that happen earlier.
I'll say something else. We have 17 pages, and they're good ideas, but they come from here. They come from here because I am so angry. I am so angry that such a beautiful nation that has been so full of hope for people across the world for centuries has been besmirched. And I think we got to channel that anger into positive force to elect a president who will restore American values. We have fought petty tyrants generation after generation, and we're going to win again in 2020 to have a president to restore the hope of this country. I believe that.
Governor Inslee, You're looking at a room of 500 immigrant rights leaders around the country, all who have a lot of heart. So I want to bring a few of those leaders up to the stage to tell their stories. First up is Tomas Kennedy, who has a lot of heart. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself and ask you a question.
So thank you, Governor, for being here and listening to my story. So I was born in Argentina and immigrated to the United States in the year 2000 after an economic crisis in my country left the economy in shambles and my parents with uncertain employment. I first settled in New Jersey, and my parents hoped to resolve our immigration status, but were unable to do so after the 9/11 attacks resulted in the tightening of immigration laws. We eventually made our way to Miami, where my dad worked in construction and my mom cleaned houses. I was able to resolve my immigration status in 2012 through marriage, and after becoming a citizen 5 years later, I petitioned my parents to become permanent residents. So although my story has a happy ending, unfortunately there are millions of hardworking immigrant families that are not so lucky. In the state of Florida where I reside, immigrants are under threat like never before in recent memory. The state legislature just passed Senate Bill 168, which forces state and local entities and local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law, regardless of community priorities, local resources, or constitutional limitations. Passage of this bill will increase family separation and deportations of people who are just trying to make a better life for themselves and their loved ones. We're also seeing an expansion of for-profit immigration detention centers in Florida, and the largest detention center for children in the southern part of the state near the city of Homestead. It is operated by a company called Comprehensive Health Services, which has a $340 million contract with HHS to run the facility, and which parent company Caliburn has former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly on its board. It is the only facility of its kind in the United States that's operated by a for-profit corporation. In 2018, the organization that I work for, Flick Votes, and a progressive coalition, knocked on 1.5 million doors across Florida, and we made millions of calls and sent millions of texts to elect progressive candidates and ensure the passage of Amendment 4, which restored voting rights to 1.5 million returning citizens who were disenfranchised due to prior felony convictions. So for 2020, we want to go beyond the scope of that work to ensure that the next president is someone who will share our values, stand up for immigrants, and value them for the contributions that they make, rather than cast them as a national security threat. So, Governor, you gave me a different question. So, Governor, our movement has fought for more than 20 years to provide a pathway to citizenship for hardworking, undocumented immigrants living in our country. Today, we want to ask you if you will work with Congress and commit to immediately introduce immigration reform legislation in the first 100 days of your administration that provides a just and humane transformation to our very outdated immigration laws and prioritizes an accessible and equitable roadmap to full citizenship for undocumented people. And what will your immigration plan look like?
It's going to look like you, which is the hope for America. And I feel strongly about that. When I meet people like you, I think we're going to be okay in this country, vibrant, energetic, committed to their community. And so I hope you're going to help me fashion this, because we're going to give a route to citizenship to 11 million people to help build this country. And we're going to do that as soon as humanly possible. Now, there's a lot packed in. I want to mention some of the things you talked about. First off, this issue of forcing local law enforcement to divert their attention from real criminal law enforcement from being many ICE agents. You should know that I just passed a bill. It's called Keep Washington Working. It's going to stop Donald Trump from stopping us from doing the right thing, which is to keep people working in our communities and not allow a waste of that law enforcement activity. By the way, Donald Trump, he wanted to threaten us. He said, you know, Washington, if you don't do what I tell you to do, we're going to drop off refugees in northern Washington. And I said, bring them here to Washington. We welcome them. You can't threaten me with that. I don't worry about that, okay? Second, you mentioned our detention system. We should not have private detention industry doing this work. It distorts the system. We gotta stop that. Third, you'll be pleased to know that we've just passed an affirmative action law in my state which removes the bar to allow to give people an opportunity to exercise their skills going to school and getting contracts. We are in the march to equality in the state of Washington, and that's one of the reasons we have such a good economy, because we have bright people like you coming to our state. And I hope at some point you establish your career in Washington State. We need you.
I think he really likes Florida.
One more thing.
Oh, he wanted to...
Before he leaves, there is something I've got to bring up, because we were talking about young talent. You know, for years in my state, the Dreamers couldn't get in-state tuition so they could go to college, couldn't get financial aid. And then the Dreamers started to come down to Olympia, where our capital is, and they started talking to legislators. And there are folks like you, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ambitious, creative, smart. And we tore down the walls of ignorance. And I'm happy to say that we're one of the first, if not the first, estates to make sure that our Dreamers not only get in-state tuition, but get scholarships as well. And I'm happy to do that. So I hope you come up and take advantage of it.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Tomas. And I just want to say, I mean, one of the reasons you're here is just we really wanted to honor all that you're doing in Washington, because you're doing a lot for our community in Washington State, and you lead an incredible example for the nation. Next, we want you to hear from Devonte Garcia, who's going to share his story.
Hello, my name is Devonte Garcia from Kansas People Action in Wichita, Kansas. And I never really felt that I belonged, even though I am a U.S. citizen. Growing up multiracial and multi-ethnic, and also as a member of the LGBT community, I've always been othered by those around me. And growing up, I got to feel firsthand the danger of being the other. When I was in high school, I got my learner's permit. And one day, I got pulled over, and I was able to speak with the officer, and he told me that he pulled me over because I failed to signal a lane change. As he looked at me and my brown skin suspiciously, I handed him my learner's permit. On the back of my car listed a medical restriction, because in high school I was also diagnosed with a mental health condition. When he asked me about that, the only thing that went through my mind were the articles and the videos of black and brown people killed by police officers in routine traffic stops. And I knew that that could be me. I tried my hardest to just keep a calm exterior and calm face, and I smiled at the officer because I didn't want to be the next news story. When he pulled his hand on his side to reach for his gun. Thankfully, that interaction was not a news story. Something similar happened with my stepfather, who is an immigrant from Honduras. And in the process, while he was in the process of getting his paperwork done, he also was pulled over. And that officer communicated with him, asking him for his license, and he was terrified. My stepfather was terrified because he was in the middle of getting his application processed. And my stepfather, very rationally, was terrified and angry because he did nothing wrong, but had to, again, keep a calm face and smile through the engagement. So a lot of times, people of color are criminalized and not given opportunities and economic opportunities. So my question to you is, how will your administration work to reverse the efforts and ensure that immigrants are part of our country's plan to tackle income inequality?
Well, I'll answer your question, but first I want to respond to your story, which was very compelling. And the next time I'm on The View, I'm going to suggest they have you on there, because this is a great story I hope you'll share with America. I want to talk about sort of the broader context of racial and gender disparities in the nation, if I can, for a minute, because your story touches on those things. And I want to tell you, as a public official, this is a challenge to some degree, because I've never experienced personally what you've experienced. I've never been a black guy pulled over by a white police officer. I've never been an LGBTQ guy. Somebody yelled at me on the sidewalk. I've never been a woman who's talked over in a meeting, right? That still happens. And so I have felt I have a really added responsibility to go the extra yard and give 200% effort to try to build a more just society in state where I'm governor. And I've tried to really dedicate myself to that. And so I'll just mention some of the things we've done, I think, on that vein. First off, I'm very happy we've now passed one of the more progressive police responsibility laws for when there's police citizen violence, to reduce the shootings that have occurred with people when we have racial disparity. It is a reason why I've ended the death penalty, which has been involved with so much racial disparity. It is a reason we know that drug wars in this country have been massively racial disparity. So not only have we legalized marijuana, but we're offering pardons to thousands of people with marijuana convictions. So it doesn't stop them from getting back in society. We've had a 3 strikes law, which was racially disparate, and we've removed some of the convictions that end up being lifetime in prison. And we're doing something that I'm really happy about. We are trying to make it so that juveniles, because we've had so many juvenile black males end up in our criminal justice system at age 13, 14, we want to keep them in the educational system, not the criminal justice system. So we're changing it. We're having more diversion in this regard. We've also got the best, we're very radical in Washington. We think women should be paid the same as men. So we have the best gender pay equity laws in the United States so that women can't be victimized. So I want to tell you, we're doing a lot of things in Washington I think we need to do on a national basis. Now, your question was about income inequality. This is a huge question. Let me just briefly tell you some things we got to do. Number one, we have to realize there was a group of people who brought us the weekend, and that's called the unions. And I believe the people who brought us the weekend now need to bring us wage increases by changing our collective bargaining laws so we can get back to having people in unions, so when people work harder and more productive, they get to get some of the wages, not just the top CEO at McDonald's. And you'll see in my bill, including in my energy proposal, I've proposed a suite of things so more people can get unions, so that half the people, imagine this, half the people in the United States have not had a raise for 25 years, even though they're producing more products. We get more people in unions, that's going to change. And I'm going to make sure it changes. And even after the Janus decision by the court that tried to strip the ability of people to have unions, I've made sure we got more people in unions today than when I started as a governor. So I'm happy about the work we're doing. Second, we've got to do the suite of laws that are wraparound services. We got the best paid family leave. We talked about the public option. We got a better financial aid so that people can use to go to college. And I'm happy the New York Times just said that my college scholarship program is the richest, most robust in the nation. We want you guys like you to be able to afford a college education. Last thing I'll mention, I do think we've made a mistake in this nation telling some of our kids that if they don't get a 4-year degree, they're a failure in life. That's just wrong. There's a lot of great careers. There's a lot of great careers as machinists and SEIU members and IBW members. And so we've started an apprenticeship program so people can get into trades and technical things even without a college education. So those are just a few things we got to do. Then we got to repeal the Trump tax cuts, and don't get me started. And by the way, I'd love to have you come apply for the Washington State Patrol. You'd be great. Come on up.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Devontae. Here's what we're going to do, because I don't think the governor's going to let us hold him over his time. So we're going to do a speed round. We have 2 more leaders. They're going to take about 2 minutes each to tell their stories and ask a question. Then I'm going to give you 2 minutes to respond before we close this out, all right? So, Jennifer, Jenny. She's one of your residents. Jenny, the mic is yours.
My name is Jenny Martinez. I am a U.S. citizen, and as the proud daughter of immigrants displaced by U.S. foreign and environmental policy, my earliest memories have my fierce sense of protectiveness for my parents' safety and my fear of our family becoming another broken household. I know what it is to watch parents struggle to lay down a foundation for a family in a country whose culture and politics make it feel like they're building on constantly shifting sand. Seeing their struggle with the instability of being displaced from their homes and the threat of deportation led me to youth organizing with One America Votes in 2010. In fact, Governor Inslee, I was a part of the interviewing committee from One America Votes that chose to endorse you in 2012. And in 2016, voting for you was among my first opportunities to exercise that right. As a teenager, I organized and advocated for the Washington State DREAM Act. I was there that day in 2014 as Somewhere Over the Rainbow played and you signed the bill into law. This week, my students at Tyee High School and SeaTac wrote letters to you supporting your decision to sign the strongest stateside sanctuary policy in the country, known as the Keep Washington Working Act. And I know you've worked on climate policy your whole career. My parents instilled in me a sense of responsibility to serve my community regardless of my personal status. Because of this, I've learned that while receiving citizenship or status is pure luck, it does bring to those few that have it, in the words of my father, a sense of freedom to explore my opportunities. Citizenship is about our collective community's liberation, and unless all of us are free from the burden of this inhumane immigration system, our citizenship is not complete. The time is now. Our separated families, our threatened communities cannot wait. Today, I ask you to commit to bringing the work we've done in Washington to the national level. Push our country to follow the precedent for immigration reform that Washington State has set. That we may be a country where our policy and culture reflect the beliefs that we are all created equal and that human rights, like immigrant and refugee rights, are respected and defended. You've recognized that climate change and global warming are significant threats to our world. As weather conditions become more extreme, families will continue to move across borders, some fleeing devastating natural disasters. The current administration has responded to these drastically changing conditions by refusing to engage in global climate change efforts and increasing inhumane border policies and attacking due process. Current U.S. policy doesn't include an avenue for victims of climate disasters, with the exception of TPS, which is a reactive rather than proactive program. How would you address this as president? How can the fight for climate change include immigration reforms?
Thank you.
2 minutes or less. 2 minutes or less.
We have to lead the nation. Donald Trump has torn up every alliance we have. He's said that climate change is a hoax. He has said that wind turbines cause cancer. He's wrong. We know they cause jobs. And we know that we have to re-engage the international community in coming up to a response of the massive climate migration crisis we are going to experience in the next several decades. And that's why I'm encouraging, if I'm president, we will re-engage in a convention so that we can join the United Nations to develop an international response to the climate migration crisis that is going to break upon us. But first, you have to have a president who believes in alliances, and I do, including the Paris Treaty. When I'm president, we're not only going to be in the Paris Treaty, it's going to get stronger, and we're going to put 8 million people to work, carpenters, laborers, machinists, building a clean energy future for the United States of America. That's what we're going to do. Now, you mentioned something about your parents. We've heard the president wants to tear up decades of American policy of reunifying families, because this country has understood the power and the foundational importance of families. He wants to go to a, quote, merit-based system of immigration. And what he means by that, merit means looking like Donald Trump. That is not what this country needs, okay? And so I believe this. Being a father has merit. Being a mother has merit. Being an uncle has merit. Being an aunt has merit. And we got to stick to the traditional foundations of this. Now, I have a privilege. I'm going to exercise a little authority as governor of the United States. I'm going to walk over if I can. As governor of the Washington State, I have a certain privilege. Every day I get to honor the most inspirational Washingtonian that I meet. And when I do that, I take off the governor's Apple pin and I pin it on the most inspirational Washingtonian of the day. This is our Washingtonian of the day right here, Jenny, right here.
Well, congratulations for being the most inspiring Washingtonian. So, we have one more story for you to hear before we start to close, but right before I do that, I just want to acknowledge our friends and partners at NBC Telemundo for live streaming this entire forum. We just want to give them a round of applause, everybody. Thank you, Telemundo. Thank you, Telemundo. So the final story we're going to hear is from an incredible leader named Marta Duran. Marta.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Marta. Soy sobreviviente de la masacre de Las Vegas. Perdón. Vine en el año 2003, vine buscando mejorar la situación económica de mi familia. Como emigrante he pasado por muchas dificultades, humillaciones y no ha sido fácil. En el año 2017 en Las Vegas ocurrió una balacera en las afueras del Mandalay Bay. Hubieron 59 muertos y casi 600 heridos. Yo estaba trabajando en la limpieza y de repente escuché ráfagas de las balas, una tras otra. Las balas volaban. En ese momento me tiré al piso de rodillas. Me fui a esconder. Rogamos a Dios que nos protegiera de las balas. Momentos después, al salir, fue lo peor que pude ver de esa tragedia. Era sangre, heridos, muertos, gente corriendo. Chocábamos, fue algo terrible. Pero de lo malo salió algo bueno. Bueno, a los 3 días de la tragedia nos avisaron de una clínica de salud mental. Allí conocí a personas que nos ayudaron mucho. También encontré a McDonald, Nevada. Y con esfuerzo nos organizamos y logramos conseguir 70 cartas firmadas por el Cherry para ganar la visa U. Y ya que el Cherry no quería firmarlas, ya estamos en el proceso de la U visa. Hay una esperanza, aunque estoy feliz que tendré un permiso de trabajo. Hay más de 11 millones de personas que no tienen visas. Nadie tiene que pasar por una tragedia como la mía para tener una visa. En abril del 2019, alrededor de 100,000 individuos fueron arrestados en la frontera entre los Estados Unidos y México. Muchos escapaban de la violencia, el cambio climático y la pobreza absoluta. Las familias huyen desespero en realidades peligrosas contra las mujeres y la comunidad LGTBI. Señor gobernador, como presidente, ¿cómo trabajaría para que se reconozca el derecho internacional al asilo y que se pueda invertir en los países centroamericanos para promover el desarrollo económico.
Gracias, Marta. We're going to have that translated for you. We're going to have that translated for everybody else.
Good afternoon. My name is Marta Duran. I came to this country in 2003. In 2017, in the city of Las Vegas, a gun-related tragedy occurred outside of Hotel Mandalay Bay. There were 59 murders and almost 600 wounded. I was working there as a janitor that night. All of a sudden, I heard the rounds of shots fired. I got on my knees and hid with my co-workers. There was blood everywhere, people wounded, people dead, others running in chaos. It was horrible. But out of the tragedy, there was also hope. We organized to put pressure on the sheriff, who was resistant to sign 70 letters so that we could apply for a U visa. I felt there was hope. Even though I will have a work permit, there are 11 million people who don't have documents. We need immigration reform. In April 2019, nearly 100,000 individuals were apprehended at the southern border, many part of the exodus seeking to escape violence, climate change, and endemic poverty. Families are fleeing despair and environments hostile to women and LGBTQIA persons. As president, how would you work to restore the international recognized right to asylum and invest in Northern Triangle countries to promote local economic development?
Lo siento, mi español es muy mal. Pero mi corazón es grande, mi cabeza es okay. It's okay. I tried learning Spanish at age 15, but there was a girl in my Spanish class, and I was very enchanted with her, and so I couldn't study, and I've been married to her for 46 years now, so it turned out okay. There's two parts to this question. One involves human rights. We're talking about fundamental human rights. And I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I do know Benito Juárez's quote, el respeto de los derechos de otros es la paz. The respect to the rights of others is peace. And that's fundamentally what we're talking about here, is a human right. And it's a human right enshrined in American law, which is protected by the U.S. Constitution. And we should not abandon that in the face of someone in the White House who really is a fearful person and an insecure person. So I start this theory thinking about this from a human rights perspective. But it is also an issue of global disaster we're facing right now because of the climate crisis. And the way, if you don't want people who are starving to death, whose crops cannot be grown because the climate is changing, and because you're a president who refuses to recognize clear science, then you ought to help those people stay in their home country instead of cutting off aid. That's a no-brainer. And we should restore our investments to give people a chance to have a healthy situation where they live. That is both the right thing to do, and it is the economical self-interest thing to do. And if I'm president of the United States, when I'm president of the United States, that's the course I intend to take. And I'm glad you're here. I have to say one other thing too, and it's going to be very difficult for us to talk about, but I cannot not talk about this. Your tragedy, I know, has touched you, and I can't imagine the pain you must have had. But we had another tragedy a few hours ago in Virginia where 11 people lost their lives in a mass shooting. And I say this because this community and every community are potential victims of gun violence. And I believe very strongly this, following this tragedy in Virginia, people have said we should not talk about the need to fight gun violence, to have common sense gun laws in this country when there are tragedies. I believe that's exactly when we need to talk about it. This nation needs common sense gun safety laws. We're having Washington State, and you can count on me to do that as president. Thank you.
Gracias. Well, thank you so very much for being here. So when you are president, Our hope is that you will work with the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, with the Chirla Action Fund, with Community Change Action, in order for us to move forward your vision and our vision together. Will you meet with us when you become President of the United States to move forward together?
Definitely, and I look forward to this. By the way, I want to compliment this organization. This has been a really effective event that you're doing today because you're raising people's understanding in America. This is just not about candidates. People are hearing your message across the country. And I have to tell you, some of the most courageous, toughest, most dedicated people in my state are those who are getting up and going to school in the morning, having to worry about ICE, and getting up and going to work to pay for their kids' education, having to worry about the fact that Congress has totally dropped the ball on comprehensive immigration reform. And the fact that you have come here to Los Angeles, you've sent a message of hope, not only to those people, to all Americans who believe the American dream is alive. I look forward to working with you. Hope I win your vote. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Well, thank you so much, Governor.
Give it up for Governor Jay Inslee, everybody.
Let's hear
Let's
it
give him a
for
round of
Governor
applause.
Inslee.
So Angelica, four presidential candidates. How y'all feeling? Did you hear some good things today? So before I have Angelica close us out, I just want to, there's some thank yous we have to do. First and foremost, can we thank the hotel staff? The workers who behind the scenes makes this hotel run and who helped put this together with us. I want to also thank the Chirla Action staff.
And I want to thank the Community Change Action staff.
And all of you, the Firm Network, Firm Action, all of our allies and friends and guests and visitors, thank you all for coming, for being with us today. Thanks again to NBC Telemundo for the live stream of over 6 million to over 6 million people around the country and world.
So who's ready to knock on doors in 2020 for 2020? Who's ready to get out the vote? Who's ready to win? For our families, for workers, and for our country. Thank you so very much for being here, for showing your power. Thank you to all the candidates that came and decided to have a conversation with us. But our work is not done. Our work begins in order to create a more equal and just nation. And we're going to do it together. Are you ready? Thank you so very much, and that concludes our...
Si se puede, si se puede, si se puede, si se puede.
Y se pudo. Gracias.